Hello, I'm Dango Rose. Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. The Mountaineer brings you the latest news of the Peak to Peak region, in print, online, through our podcast, social media, and special publications. Now, listen in to the latest news of the area with our local journalists.
Good morning, Mountaineer listeners. I'm Tyler Hickman. I'm sure you're all sick of hearing about the snow deficit the whole state is feeling right now. We're at historically low levels of snowpack, and concerns about water supply are starting to mount. The snow will come, eventually. Even with so little snow, we can still count on our sponsor for today's show, Eldora Mountain. Skip the epic traffic on I-70 and head to Eldora for good vibes all season long. Eldora is your go-to spot for non-stop winter fun with great local skiing and riding, plus slopeside DJs and après music series. Don't miss the full moon ski tour, the Timbers Rail Jam, or the morning uphill grind. Get all the details and check out weekly events at eldora.com. See you on the mountain. Until the snow does come, we thought we'd give you a bit of a reminder of what it's like to trudge through snow up to your waist. A big blizzard can shut town down for days and cause a slew of inconvenience as the world literally freezes for a moment in time. But what was it like to live through a blizzard before we could count on snowplows clearing our streets and generators keeping the lights on? On today's show, Maryann Rosen asks, what was life like for peak-to-peak settlers during a 19th century blizzard? As you can guess, pioneers weren't exactly doing snow angels. But before we dive in, here are this week's news bites. Nederland jumped a big hurdle towards its plan to buy Eldora this week. At its Tuesday, January 6th meeting, the Board of Trustees voted unanimously to approve the town's purchase of the local ski resort, setting the final steps needed to acquire Eldora Mountain in motion. The town spent most of 2025 stuck in the process of assessing the physical and financial condition of the resort. The plan is to use revenue bond funds to pay for the acquisition, drawing cash from things like lift tickets, food, and drinks, so the town and its taxpayers aren't on the hook for a repayment. The purchase price is set at $120 million. Trustees still need to approve the bond structure, a vote that's expected at its January 20th meeting. Also, the death of former Gilpin County resident Roy Smith has brought renewed attention to one of the most troubling civil rights cases in county history. In the 1990s, Smith, a black man living in and around Central City, was the plaintiff in a federal lawsuit accusing the Gilpin County Sheriff's Department of failing to protect him from racially motivated crimes. The lawsuit detailed a pattern of inaction. For years, Smith reported violent attacks, and despite medical records and eyewitness accounts, the cases were repeatedly closed or left unresolved. After moving away for his own safety, Smith was ultimately awarded $700,000 in a settlement with the county and lived out the rest of his days as an artist and musician on a little plot of land he called Royville. He passed away January 2nd at the age of 79. If you want to hear more of Smith's story, you can read reporter Mindy Leary's outstanding obituary of the man known as Ramblin' Roy in this week's print edition. Also, Boulder County awarded more than $2 million in funding to projects across the county's many fire protection districts and emergency response agencies that dot its rural mountain communities. This round of funding, provided by the Emergency Service Sales Tax approved by voters in 2022, is the tax's largest disbursement since 2023. The money will bring improvements to operations, equipment, and technology, including the funds to replace a 34-year-old brush truck for the Indian Peaks Fire Protection District. And finally, it's no secret that the Peak to Peak has the sauce when it comes to pizza. And it looks like another heavyweight pie slinger is entering the ring in Blackhawk. The restaurant, which opened on Gregory Street in October, brings a slice of Brooklyn to the mountains with its handmade stone hearth pizzas on the menu. I'll be honest, I'm a bit of a pizza snob. I grew up just outside of New Haven, Connecticut, the undeniable home to the best pizza in the world. If you know, you know. And the Peak to Peak has some of the best pizza joints in Colorado, to my taste. The proof is in the dough at Ned's Crosscut Pizza and Toss in Rollinsville. So I'm pretty excited to give this one a try. And those are today's News Bites. As always, you can read these stories and so much more in this week's print paper or at the mtnear.com. Now, I'll turn it over to our history correspondent, Maryann Rosen, reporting straight from the historical blizzards that buried the Peak to Peak in the 1800s. If you ever wondered what it was like to dig yourself out of 7 feet of snow without the help of your trusty snowblower, you're going to want to stick around. Here's Maryann.
I'm Maryann Rosen, bringing you history, lore, or stories from or about the mountains you live in. The warmth and zephyr-like breezes of summer, the beautiful colors and the chill of autumn, or the incredible wildflowers, bird calls, and the promise that is spring. Whether in the foothills and front range of the Rockies, where the Peak-to-Peak area is nestled, is a mixed bag. It is, however, winter in the high country that is the most unpredictable and changeable. From chilly to frigid, windy to blustery, or soft flurries to heavy snow, the season runs the gamut. Blizzards are always a possibility. 50 inches in 2024, 36 inches with 40 to 50 mile per hour winds in 2021. 2006 saw a blizzard leave behind 5 feet of snow. In 2003, 7+ feet of snow fell in Rollinsville and Eldora. In Rollinsville, tunnels in the snow were dug in order to leave houses, while in Eldora at the ski area, hundreds of people were stranded after an avalanche and a broken snowplow blocked the road. A major historical storm effectively shutting down the entire Front Range occurred in 1982. Better building codes were established after a blizzard in 1921, and another storm, still considered one of Colorado's worst, paralyzed the area in 1913. At the time, daily weather forecasting was a developing science, and many were caught off guard when, instead of the partly cloudy skies forecast in the local newspaper, the area was bombarded with 4 feet of snow in Denver and much higher accumulations in the foothills and mountains of the Front Range. It is, however, thoughts of 19th century storms that have piqued the imagination. What was it like to live through a storm during the time of the gold rush, mining boom, and the establishment of many of the communities along the Peak to Peak? With a lack of modern insulation and heating, and no double-paned windows, along with many areas not having electricity, homes were not always the cozy havens we now have. Mountain towns were also more isolated than they are today. Transportation and the transporting of goods was limited. Many areas relied on trains. Howling winds shook windows and timber. Cold temperatures penetrated rooms and bones. When the snows came, there were no modern snowplows and snowblowers, and as anyone who has done it knows, shoveling leaves one wet and exhausted, and chores also still needed to be done. The sudden, violent shifts in weather and the extreme cold and blinding snow in 19th century Colorado blizzards made getting lost and freezing a real and frequent danger for prospectors, homesteaders, and travelers. Many cattle froze and people perished. Towns snuggled in the Rocky Mountains peak-to-peak area would have been particularly vulnerable to such deadly blizzards during severe winter storms in the 1800s. In the hibernal season of 1886 to 1887, snows began in mid-November, and the cold and precipitation continued into March. At the time, cattle were allowed open range to graze. However, after losing nearly a quarter of the cattle in the Front Range to the snow and cold, the tradition of open range grazing was ended. Although more famous in the Northeast, the Great Blizzard of 1888 had a major impact also along the peak-to-peak. It was, however, another notable storm and winter that remains as one of the peak-to-peak's worst. Although November and very early December began normally for the mountain towns, mid-December 1898 through February 1899 changed all of that. Local records and historical accounts reveal that this period was one of the most brutal in Colorado's high country history. The Great Blizzard of 1899 is famous for both its record cold — some peak-to-peak towns hit temperatures of minus 35 degrees Fahrenheit — and its deep snow buried towns. Central City and Blackhawk were severely impacted by the total shutdown of the Colorado Central and other mountain railroads. Historical reports from this period describe the towns being cut off from coal and food supplies for weeks. As a major mining center, the connected towns of Central City and Blackhawk were heavily dependent on transport for supplies, making these blizzards economically devastating. Nederland, as a high-altitude silver and tungsten mining community, faced extreme isolation. The big snow made the steep wagon roads and early rail lines impassable, forcing miners to live off of stored rations. Before we continue along, let's take a moment to think about the miners. Would they have had to work in heavy snows and harsh winter conditions? Well, not sure if they could actually reach the mines during a major blizzard. However, during most Arctic air and snow, the answer is yes. Miners faced frozen grounds and extreme precipitation and frigid temperatures. The drive for gold often pushed them to keep digging, sometimes using fires to thaw earth or digging under snow to keep claims. Miners dealt with frozen fingers and toes and the risk of severe frostbite. Heavy snow could wash out equipment. It could fill mines, making them dangerous. Winter intensified the loneliness and isolation of the gold fields. To hold on to valuable claims, miners often needed to stay active even in the winter to prevent others from jumping on their claims. Miners were not the only ones impacted. In 1899, Estes Park was a remote ranching and early tourism community. Records from the era indicate that during the Great Blizzard of 1899, Estes Park was largely unreachable from the valley. Deep snow on the Front Range plains made travel from nearby Longmont or Loveland nearly impossible. Smaller mountain camps such as Jamestown and Allen's Park were almost entirely marooned. In similar communities, residents reportedly spent their time trading books and playing cards in order to endure the isolation. Mountain towns were so isolated that coal for heating became scarce. Trains carrying food and supplies were frequently trapped in drifts for days or even weeks. One-story log cabins saw snow well above their rooftops. Those buildings with 2 stories saw snows reaching second-story windows. Sometimes these windows were the only access to the outside. Steps cut into the snow led shovelers down to the main front door in order to clean new snow, a job necessary more than once a day. Main street sidewalks were actually tunnels dug through the snowpack. Tunnels were also often necessary in order to leave one's house or get between buildings. Livestock and wildlife succumbed to the frigid cold, and the bird populations were decimated. It is amazing that only 24 human deaths were recorded in Colorado, primarily from avalanches and rapid temperature drops. In Apex, now a ghost town near Central City, a mother and her 2 children were killed in a slide. This winter and blizzard highlight the era's harsh, unforgiving winters. Contemplating all that homesteaders, pioneers, ranchers, and miners endured, along with imagining the bracing cold within their homes and the sensation of gale winds and heavy snow, makes me feel chilled to my bones. These people were certainly unique and extremely hardy. So, with winter upon us now, here is hoping that any blizzards pass us by. Though the thought of hibernating, sitting under a soft blanket with a warm cup of tea or coffee while reading in front of a warm, roaring fire, is not an unpleasant thought. Listen in next time to the Mountain Ear Podcast for more mountain history, lore, or stories. I'm Maryann Rosen. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Maryann. It's hard not to picture having just a little bit of fun navigating the streets of Nederland through tunnels of snow until you realize the lack of food and electricity that comes along with it. Would definitely put a damper on your snow day. That's all for today's episode. Special thanks to the reporters for delivering us a great lineup of news for this week, and to Maryann for delivering another very interesting look at life in the 19th century peak to peak. As always, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, and share it around. We're hoping to reach more listeners throughout the region, and it's a huge help when you send the show to your friends and family. If you want to get in touch, have a tip, or have a submission for our Sounds of the Town segment, where we interview residents on what sound defines their home, drop me a line at tyler@themountainear.com. This is the Mountaineer Podcast. I'm Tyler Hickman. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
And that's it for our show. Subscribe online to get more access to more news, weekly updates to our community calendar, and a link to our YouTube channel by visiting themountaineer.com. Be sure to use the coupon code PODCAST when subscribing for a 10% discount, only available to our listeners. If you are in the local peak-to-peak area, be sure to pick up a print edition of The Mountaineer at a local business. I'm Dango Rose. Thank you for listening.